most effective use of the airplane as a weapon of war, both defensively and offensively, is when it acts in teams as a single unit. Consequently, knowing how to fly formation is a must for all military pilots. The smallest unit in a formation of planes is the section, which may consist of 2 or 3 planes. The section leader is primarily responsible for the conduct of the section and its safe navigation. The job of the wingman or wingman is to maintain proper wing position in relation to the leader. When flying a wing position, the leader's wings are your horizon. A fundamental rule of formation flying is to keep your wings parallel to your leaders at all times. You'll find you have a tendency at first when you're flying wing to fly with your inboard wing down. This causes your plane to move toward your leader. Attempting to correct this by adding outside rudder causes your plane to skid. Use aileron to keep your wings level with your leader's wings. All 3-plane formation flying is parade formation, which is close and dressed up. The wing position is flown with 75 feet between corresponding parts of the wing plane and the leader, and on a 45-degree bearing from him. To establish this bearing, center your plane in the 90-degree angle formed by the trailing edge of the leader's wing and his fuselage. In this position, your inboard wingtip will be 10 feet laterally from your leader's wingtip, and your nose will be 10 feet aft of his tail. You will also maintain a 10-foot step down, which keeps you below the prop and wing wash of your leader. If you fly low enough so that you can just see the inboard wheel cover of the lead plane, you will be approximately 10 feet step down. In making turns, the inside wingman should drop down to maintain his 10-foot step down and roll on the leader's axis. The outside wingman rolls on his own axis. Since the inside wingman travels a shorter distance, he must retard throttle slightly to keep from overrunning the leader, while the outside wingman, traveling a greater distance, must advance throttle to keep up. You are the starboard wingman flying in parade formation in a V. To hold your position, frequent small adjustments of stick, rudder, and throttle must be made to correct any relative motion. If the leader seems to be pulling ahead, you are actually dropping back and must use throttle to stop the relative motion. If he seems to rise, you are dropping down and must use your stick to pull back up. Lateral movement, of course, is corrected with rudder. When the leader starts a right turn, you retard throttle slightly, dropping down and rolling on his axis to maintain your 10-foot step down. During the turn, the opposite wingman will look like this. On turning to the left, you advance throttle to maintain your 10-foot aft position and roll on your own axis, keeping your 10-foot step down throughout. The opposite wingman will be in this position. Now let's see how to form an echelon. This is the signal from the section leader to change from V to right echelon. This is the signal of execution. After the signal to form a right echelon has been given, And on the signal of execution, the left wingman drops down with slightly reduced power until he is 20 feet below the opposite wingman. He then moves back until he is 10 feet behind his tail. He then skids slowly across by applying right rudder and using his stick to keep his wings level. He adds throttle as necessary to maintain nose to tail distance. He stops his skid and eases up into position. The wings must be kept level and the movement slow. On receiving the return to B signal, the number 3 plane drops down 10 feet. Since he has already stepped down 10 feet from the plane ahead, crosses back smoothly, using throttle as necessary to keep from dropping back. On reaching the opposite side, he again uses throttle to move forward to a 45-degree bearing from the leader, then pulls up to a 10-foot step down. After receiving the right echelon and execute signals, the left wingman drops down, then back until he is 20 feet below and 10 feet aft the opposite wingman. He crosses under slowly, maintaining his position by use of throttle. Then pulls up 10 feet into the right echelon position. After the return to B signal, the number 3 man drops down 10 feet, crosses back, then moves forward to a 45-degree bearing from the leader. He then pulls up to a 10-foot step down. Left echelons and returns to B are performed in exactly the same way to the other side. Here is how the maneuver will look to you. You receive the right echelon and execute signal. The opposite wingman is kept in view as you drop down until you are 20 feet below, and then back to 10 feet behind him. Keep your wings level and cross under smoothly. Right echelon, advance your throttle and ease up into position. On the signal to return to B, you drop down 10 feet. Advance throttle to maintain nose to tail distance while crossing back. Further throttle to move forward to a 45-degree bearing from the leader. Then pull up to a 10-foot step down. Before you can fly in formation, you have to know how to get into formation. This is accomplished by the original rendezvous. Before taking off, a landmark is selected where the planes will meet. Traveling at 115 knots and at a predetermined altitude, you will rendezvous in this manner when you arrive at the rendezvous point. When the leader is directly over the point of rendezvous, he begins a left 30-degree angle of bank turn. At the completion of 180 degrees of turn, the distance from the point becomes the radius of the rendezvous circle and can be maintained with about 15 degrees of bank. It is necessary, however, for the leader to vary his degree of bank slightly in order to maintain a circular pattern around a geographical point, under all except no wind conditions. The first plane to arrive directly over the point is the leader. He begins his 30-degree angle of bank turn. The second plane rendezvous by entering the rendezvous circle and heading directly for the center of it. After determining the leader's position from him, and when directly over the center of the point, he commences a rapid left turn and continues it until he has the leader on a 45-degree bearing to the starboard of his heading, and is within the sector made up by a 225-degree and a 255-degree relative bearing from the leader. The closing relative motion commences at this point and should be continued until he is in position to join up. Pausing momentarily on the inside of the leader, he crosses under to right echelon. The third plane follows the same procedure. Here is the CV rendezvous used by the Navy as the quickest means for planes to join up after leaving a carrier. To simulate planes taking off, a right echelon will be broken and a column formed in this manner. After giving the breakup signal, the lead plane breaks to the left in a 45-degree bank, 180-degree turn, holding his altitude constant. After 5 seconds, at which time the leader will be abeam of the second plane's left wing, the second plane gives the lead to the third plane and also goes into a 45-degree bank, 180-degree turn, being sure to maintain his altitude. 5 seconds later, when the second plane is abeam of the third plane's left wing, the third plane makes the same turn. The angle of bank may be varied during the last 30 degrees of turn in order to line up directly behind the leader. It is important that all planes maintain their altitude during the turn to ensure a proper interval in column. Once in column, all planes should use throttle to adjust their airspeed to 115 knots, and the wingmen should adjust their altitude to that of the leader by placing him on the horizon. The leader maintains his new heading for 10 to 12 seconds, then begins a 180-degree turn to the left with 15 degrees of bank. When the leader bears 30 degrees off the second plane's port bow, the second plane makes a steep left turn, which he holds until the leader bears 45 degrees from him on his starboard bow. At the same time, positioning himself within the 225 to 255 degree relative bearing sector from the leader. He holds these respective bearings as he closes on the leader. When the third plane has the leader 45 degrees from his port bow, he too makes a steeply banked turn and closes on the leader in the same manner. Remember to keep all aircraft ahead of you in sight at all times. As the second plane closes on the leader, he pauses momentarily on the inside, then crosses under, moving into right echelon. The third plane does the same, waiting if necessary on the inside until he is assured that the second plane is moving into his position. You are third plane in a right echelon. The leader gives the CV breakup and rendezvous signal, passes the lead to his wingman, blows a kiss, and starts his 45-degree bank, 180-degree turn. After 5 seconds, when the lead plane is abeam of the second plane's left wing, he passes the lead, blows a kiss, and begins his 45-degree bank, 180-degree left turn. 5 seconds later, you follow, making sure you maintain your altitude. Completing your turn, you will still be 10 feet stepped down. Throttle should be used at this point to adjust airspeed and altitude to the leader. The leader holds this heading for 10 to 12 seconds after completing his turn. Then starts a 15-degree bank, 180-degree turn to his left. When the leader bears 30 degrees off the second plane's bow, the second plane commences a steep left turn. When the leader is 45 degrees off your port bow, you make a steep left turn, holding it until the leader is almost 45 degrees off your starboard bow, and you are in a 225 to 255 degree relative bearing sector from the leader. At this point, reduce your angle of bank sufficiently to commence a smooth, controlled rate of closure. Keep these bearings as you close on the leader. Don't wait until in position to cross under to take your step down. It should be taken as soon as you are close enough to recognize it. Remember, keep all planes ahead of you in sight at all times. After closing the leader, the second plane hesitates momentarily, then crosses under and behind the leader into his position in the right echelon. You follow the same procedure, flying opposite your proper position for a brief moment on the inside of the turn, and then crossing under to the right echelon. With practice, this maneuver can be done with constant power setting. But if at any time you find yourself falling back, add full throttle to catch up. If through misjudgment the second plane has fallen back, you wait on the inside opposite your wing position until he catches up. Then cross under as he is assuming his position. Always keep your eyes on your leader for any signals he may give. Here he is signaling that he is giving the lead to the second plane. The pilot of the second plane acknowledges the signal by patting his head and pointing to himself. And the pilot of the lead plane moves out 10 feet, drops down 20 feet below the second plane. Falls back to a position opposite you. Then moves in 10 feet and comes up 10 feet to make a V formation. The old leader must not take his eyes off the new leader at any time during the lead change. The parade 4-plane division is composed of two plane sections. The number 1 man is the division leader. The number 3 man, the section leader. Bearings, step downs, and distances from plane to plane are the same as in 3-plane work. To form an echelon to the right, the number 2 man describes an arc as he flies across. At the bottom of the arc, directly aft of the leader, he is stepped down 20 feet. To then form left echelon, the number 2 plane flies back across first. Section then follows, using throttle as necessary to maintain nose-to-tail distance. Turns in the balanced parade formation are made similar to the turns of 3 planes in a parade V formation. Turns in echelon are also the same. However, in the 4-plane parade formation, turns are never made into an echelon. The standard tactical formation for maximum maneuverability and effectiveness is the 4-plane division in free cruise. In this formation, the wingman and the section leader drop back to a 30-degree bearing on the division leader, while increasing their step-down and nose-to-tail distance to 20 feet respectively. This step-down must be maintained to avoid becoming caught in a slipstream or wing wash and to provide ample space for all planes to maneuver freely. A four-plane division in free cruise balanced flight appears like this when seen from the rear. When a turn is made, all planes are free to maneuver within a 60-degree limit astern of the division leader, moving inboard or outboard while maintaining position. When any turn is completed, each wingman dresses on his section leader on the outboard side of the division, bearing 30 degrees. The number 2 man is always on the opposite side from the second section. If you are flying number 4 position in slow cruise, free cruise right echelon, a turn will look like this. Turns away from the echelon are done by all planes moving into position vertically below the leader. Upon completion of the turn, the planes move back into their original echelon positions. In turns into the echelon, the number 2 man eases into position vertically below the leader. And as the number 3 and number 4 men find themselves pulling in too close to the plane in front, they also move into position vertically below the leader. When the turn is completed, all planes return to their original echelon positions. To rotate wingmen, the division leader gives the signal and the second plane slides across to the left, making a balanced formation. The number 3 and number 4 planes move up one position. The number 2 plane then passes back down the echelon and crosses to the right and takes up his position as the number 4 plane. Now let's see how the lead is passed. From your position as number 4 man, here is how it will look to you. The division leader moves out 10 feet, drops down, and then back, passing the same distance from each succeeding plane as he did the previous one. He then crosses to the right and takes his position as the number 4 man.